In this episode, I'm joined by our studio manager, Amanda, and we're unpacking everything you need to know if you're wanting to start yoga at Warrior One, or maybe you're returning to yoga after a little break. So we're going to be talking about fears, concerns, FAQs, and a lot of other juicy things. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So let's kick off by talking a little bit about your yoga history and how you started yoga.
Sure. I started yoga as prenatal yoga. My sister bought me some vouchers. We lived in Port Melbourne at the time, and I used to waddle down to St Kilda because we didn't have a car, do my yoga class, and then waddle all the way back to Port Melbourne, which got quite challenging towards the end of the pregnancy. And I absolutely loved it. I'd never been exposed to yoga before, and I couldn't believe how great it felt in my body and how nurturing it was for me, not only physically but also mentally as well. It was a beautiful, spacious practice, which I loved. So after I had children, I realised how much you nurture outwards as a mother, especially a new mother. There's all the things that have to be done. So I think now when I go to my mat, when I go onto the mat in practice, I'm nurturing inwards again and really filling my own cup. And it is, one of the oldest forms of self-care, I believe. It's just so great for your body, your mind and your heart as well. So nowadays I try and carve out some time where I can to do a bit of practice at home. Obviously I get to the studios quite a lot, which is great. But now my practice looks very different to what it did then. I used to run a lot and I really just wanted to smash myself all the time. So vinyasa classes were my jam. I just really wanted to feel like I was getting a great workout. And now I do those a lot less often. And I really love yin, the magic of yin, and just really slowing down and being with myself, with my breath, going to the edge of my comfort zone sometimes in some of those really long holds. I absolutely love it. What am I feeling? Why is it uncomfortable? Can I sit with it? It's very much more of a mental game now, yoga for me.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I love that transformation of the practice, right?
Yes, I think that comes with age and experience.
Well, we talk about community being a huge pillar behind everything that we do at Warrior One, and it's a big reason a lot of people come to the mat. What does community mean to you, and how do you see it unfolding in the studios?
Community for me is based around connection, and that can be a connection to your fellow yogis, to the teacher, to the space itself, but probably most importantly, connection to yourself and going inward. We very much create a very welcoming, accessible environment at Warrior One, and we love absolutely all of our yogis. And I love being there in the studio before and after class and seeing everybody chatting to each other. And, the teachers have such beautiful bonds with all of their yogis, which is great. And I think that just having that space that feels very safe and very welcoming and very nurturing is really important to cultivate that sense of I want to be there, I want to go to the studio and practice. That's really fostering the community for me.
Yeah, beautiful. I know that for a lot of people, coming to your first class, whether it be at Warrior One Yoga or another studio, can be really overwhelming, right? Particularly if you potentially never done yoga before, or you're coming back after a long time of being away from having a child or an injury or some other reason. So what do you say? I know you talk to a lot of people every week on the phone about that kind of fear of getting to the mat. What do you say to those people, and how do they overcome that?
I would say, firstly, just come to the studio, just show up, because I think that's half the battle, right? There's so many other things that we could be, should be, need to be doing, but to actually carve out that time and make that effort to get your gear on, go to the studio, get inside the studio, find that space for yourself on the mat is so important. That is the hardest part. So once you're there, everything just flows essentially. So if you can get to the studio and also make it work for you. We've got a lot of classes. We've got a very extensive schedule on all three studios. So there is something for everyone at every time of day, whether you're a morning person, an evening person, create it in a time that is going to work for you in a sustainable way, in an ongoing way, because then you will actually really create great change and great habits in your life. If you particularly love particular teachers or classes, times of day, book those in, make that happen, and just get to the studio. That is the first step.
Yeah, that's great advice. When people often say to me, like, what do you think you're competing against? And I'm like, people's time.
Yes.
We're competing against people's time because we only have so much time to do all the things that we need to do. Look after children, look after ourselves, go to work, the myriad of things. And, to carve out that time is so important and powerful.
All the things. Yeah. And I think people, generally do have an excitement about coming to their first class, a little bit scared as well. We call it skited in my house, scared and excited together. But everybody has to do their first class. Even the best yogis in the world, right? Everyone has had to do their first class at some point. So you'll only do your first class once, and then it's done. And then the feeling that you'll get after that first class is amazing. It's euphoric. You'll be so uplifted. You'll literally float out of the studio and you'll think, why didn't I do this sooner? And the number of people that say that to me, oh my gosh, Amanda, I should have started sooner, or my GP was telling me, or my friend was telling me, and I didn't really realize, and now I get it.
Yes. One of the frequently asked questions I know that we get a lot is that I'm not going to be good enough. I'm going to be the worst person in the room. What do you say to someone that says that or asks that?
I think that no one will be looking at you. No one's going to be bothered by you being in the studio if you've never done yoga before. The number of people that call me or come into the inbox saying, I'm a plank of wood, I can't touch my toe, I can't bend past my waist. You have to start somewhere, right? Like, no one's going to be great at something that they're doing for the first time. But yoga is a very unique modality in that you can see really quick improvements if you create a really great habit. And you can grow quite quickly in your yoga practice, and things just sort of start to land, and you find that you can move a bit further, you can stretch a bit further, you understand, the sequencing a bit better, and it's definitely something that you can see pretty measurable improvement in a short period of time. So I would say to those people that are worried about, I'm not going to be able to do it, just try. And you know what? Some days you can and some days you can't. Like, some days I get to class and I don't feel great in my body, and I just do what I need to do. And I think that's the power of yoga, is that you just go inwards and you listen to what your body needs, which is incredibly rare these days. We're always looking outwards, out of ourselves, rather than going inwards and thinking, what does my body need today? And your back bend is not going to look like mine, right? Like, everybody's built so differently. So it's every practice is very, very unique to you, and usually very unique on the day as well.
Yeah, that's a really great point, right? Yoga is such a work in, not a work out.
Yes.
And it's so important to realize that your practice doesn't need to look anything like anyone else in the room. It's your own practice.
Yes.
And it's exactly why we call it a practice, because that's what it is. It is just moving our body through a range of motion so we feel better and we show up better in life.
So true.
I know a lot of people say, I can't touch my toes, I'm not flexible enough, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. What do you say to that?
I always say that you've got it the wrong way around. So it's like putting the cart before the horse. You need to do yoga to become more flexible. So you will never become more flexible by not, essentially. So again, just come, just start, just try and do whatever you feel comfortable doing in the class that you're in. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. And even the teachers, they encourage all levels. We have all levels in every single class, essentially. And they would very much encourage you to listen to your body and think, right, they're telling me to do that, but I know that I hate being in a headstand or whatever it is. I can't do it, or I'm not going to do it. It doesn't feel good for me. So just honor that. Give yourself permission to do what your body needs to do, what it's asking for.
Yeah, that's a great one. And it's exactly a really strong motto at Warrior One. It's listen to your body first and the teacher second, right? Your body is telling you what it can and can't do.
So true.
I love the saying, yoga is not about touching your toes. It's about the journey on the way down.
Yeah.
How good's that?
So true.
What about people that have injuries or feel like they're older and, you know, they're not going to be able to do the actual physical postures that are offered?
I think with injuries, especially, it's incredibly important that you communicate that with the teacher. If you're, you know, in a rehab situation with an injury, or if your physio has suggested you should go and do yoga, say, hey, my shoulder's busted, or my hips are this, or my lower back's that. So the teacher will give you modifications as you go along to keep you safe and to keep you comfortable and to actually help you in your sort of wellness journey going forward. So injuries is a big one, to be really open and honest about that and not try and push through. It should never be painful, right? We should never be feeling pain. It can feel uncomfortable, but there's a difference between pain and discomfort, right? And we all know, you know, we should know how to listen to our bodies and adjust accordingly. In terms of age, yeah, I feel like yoga is something that I will be doing until I'm really, really old, because I feel like I can. And, you know, while my practice has evolved and will continue to evolve, I'll still be doing it until my later years. And I love that about yoga, because I don't run as much now because I find that my body doesn't enjoy it. So I think yoga is probably the perfect modality as you age. You know, you don't need to be doing massive amounts of cardio. You know, it's not great for your body, but strength and flexibility are really important as we get older. So yeah, yoga, number one.
Yes. A lot of people don't know, but we actually take kids from 10 years of age to public classes. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a child or a niece or a nephew or somebody in your life that loves the practice, we take kids from 10. And I'd say probably, I'm not sure if you know the exact age, but I think our oldest
mid-70s.
Mid-70s, yeah. Right? So what a vast age group, 10 to 75. Yeah. It's amazing.
So true. So true. And you know, I'm inspired by the people who are older than me. I'm like, wow, you know, I want to be them as I want to keep going so that I can still move, and I want to be able to do my shoelaces up when I'm 75. So, yes. You know, start now.
Yes. So you can touch the ground. Yeah. What about people that have never done yoga before at all? What's a good starting point for them?
Again, just coming to the studio. So we have 4 different styles of yoga at Warrior One. Yin, we have Vinyasa Fundamentals, we have a slow flow and Vinyasa flow, but all of our classes suit all levels of practice. So it's not something that you feel like you need to come to a particular style of class if you've never done yoga before, because the teacher gives an offering to pretty much all levels. And you'll see that in the room. There'll be beginners like you, there'll be people that are a little bit more intermediate that have been coming for a while, and there are people that are obviously quite advanced. So you just let them do their thing and just stay within yourself. But I, again, would encourage people to just start where you are and do what the teacher is offering you. And if they say the first level is this and that's where you're happy, that's where you get off the elevator essentially. And then, you know, 2 weeks later, you might be able to go to level 2 and you're like, wow, look at this. This is great. So yeah, just come and start.
Yeah. We often say between, you know, you, myself and the teachers, we often talk about how the most advanced person in the room is the person listening to their body and taking the variation that's meeting them where they are that day.
I think that I've come to know that later in life. We very much have a fear of not, you know, doing the wrong thing, not doing what the teacher's telling us to do. You don't want to get in trouble. You won't get in trouble. But it's more, do you know what? I know that that's what they've said, but my body doesn't want that today. And, you know, if you can honor that, that is so powerful and so potent for you and your body. And you will walk out of that class feeling so much better that you listened to yourself rather than doing what the teacher is asking you to do. It's an incredibly powerful practice.
In yoga, I think one of the barriers can sometimes be the language, and that's that the teachers will use Sanskrit.
Yes.
Right? So vinyasa is, of course, a Sanskrit word, and I know I've seen emails in the inbox, people saying, what is vinyasa? Can you help the listeners understand what that means and where they should start there?
It's vinyasa is the practice of yoga that is sort of almost defined by the breath. So it's a flowing sequence of poses that is articulated within the breath itself. So with the inhale and the exhale and the pose sort of in the middle. It is different for everyone. right? Like again, it's an instruction that the teachers give, and your breath count is very different to my breath count. And I love seeing that in class. I love seeing people who, can move through poses quite quickly because their breathing is a bit shallower. But, if you're really taking deep breaths, then you can really extend it out. And I think in our slow flow classes, that's really beautiful because you can take a lot longer and hold the poses for a little bit longer and, just really honor your body. And it's almost like a metronome to sort of have that, the breath as the open bracket and closed bracket within the pose. So yeah, vinyasa is just yoga poses to breath, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's why I have really fallen in love with yoga since I've been in my 20s, is because there's this practice of breath to movement like you described. And then by the end of that class, it's a euphoric sense because you just feel like you've inhaled and exhaled so precisely.
Yes, and mindfully.
And mindfully and intentionally for a whole hour or 75 minutes or the length of the class. And you just feel like,
it's so true. And that, when you think about it, we can go weeks without food. We can go days without water, but we can only go a few minutes without breathing. And it is the fastest way to get into yourself, right? People are constantly thinking, what am I going to eat next? That's just probably me. But the quickest way to get into your body is through your breath. So yeah, amazing.
Yeah, beautiful. What about the more practical stuff? What do I need to do? What do I need to bring? All those kinds of questions that we get.
So at Warrior One Yoga, we have all mats in the studio. You don't need to bring a yoga mat. If you don't have one, that's fine. If you do, you're more than welcome to bring one. We have all the props that you would ever need to do yoga: blocks, bolsters, blankets, chin-up balls, all the toys.
We are heavy on the props.
We are heavy on the props. Love that for us though, and our yogis. My strongest advice would be to try and get there a bit earlier, just 10 to 15 minutes before the class starts. Get yourself a park. You don't want to be rushing to relax. Get there early, say hi to the teacher, let them know how you're feeling that day. Again, as we spoke about injuries or coming back to your practice or, your postpartum, etc. Just let them know where you're at on that day. And then just get settled, get into the studio, find your spot. If you're a newbie and you're in front of the teacher, but in the center of the room, that's a great spot because then you can see the teacher, you can see people behind you. If you're in a downward dog, you feel quite enveloped, which is really lovely and not really out on the fringe. You just need to bring your lovely self a drink bottle, maybe a towel if you want, but I would just encourage you to get there a little bit early just so that it's not as overwhelming when the class starts and you're not rushing and the teacher will know that you're new. They will show you through where everything is and just take a breath, sit down and take a breath.
Beautiful. Yeah, something that all studios offer and we offer an introductory offer. And the reason is to really support people into the practice. And our intentional offer is $65 for 21 days unlimited yoga. And it doesn't mean you have to smash yourself and come for 21 days, right?
Yes.
Some people do. And some people use that as a challenge. We all know it takes 21 days to reset a new habit. And if this is something that you're wanting in your life, it's a really good thing to do. But equally, some people come just once a week and that is their intention. I'm going to do this alongside my Pilates, or I'm going to do this alongside my gym membership for mindfulness, for breath work, for stretching, for whatever your reason of coming to the yoga mat is. It can be a really beautiful invitation just to try it. And I just say to people, try as many classes as you can. As many different teachers, as many different styles, because it might take a few weeks to find the groove and to find the class that resonates for you.
So true. And also, I think the days of the week and times of day, people have every intention of, smashing out a 6 a.m. vinyasa class, but then they find that the evening yin classes they really love it. And they sort of think, oh, I actually didn't need the vinyasa because I do have a gym membership, but I actually need the more meditative, the release work and the breath work that comes with yin. So yeah, 100%, just try as many classes as you can.
Yeah. Any last words for our yogis, new or returning?
I think probably the biggest comment that I have from new people is either age or inflexibility. And we've already addressed the flexibility. So come to yoga and you will become more flexible and not the other way around. But in terms of age, I heard this beautiful folktale recently about a woman who carries water from a river back to her home, and she has a bamboo pole and 2 buckets on either side of the pole. One bucket is new and is very solid, and the other bucket has a few cracks and it leaks water. So she goes to the river and she collects the water and she brings it home. And when she gets home, the new bucket is still full of water, and the old bucket that has cracks is about half full, it's lost some water. And the old bucket feels very bad and that it can't do its job properly, and is very apologetic to the woman. I'm sorry that, I'm not as good as what I used to be. And the woman says, look at the road that we walk to the river. And on the side of the road, there are flowers. And the older bucket, because of the leaks, is watering the flowers every time they come back from the river. And to me, that is such a beautiful and very potent way to think about, when we do have cracks and we do get a little bit leaky, we still can provide, purpose and beauty out there in the world. So I think in terms of yoga, that is a really beautiful way to make your life feel a bit more beautiful.
What a beautiful way to end. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for listening.